There is one food sitting in almost every American kitchen right now that is quietly damaging your heart more than cholesterol ever could. And the shocking part, your doctor probably told you it was fine, maybe even healthy. For decades, the medical community focused on fat, on cholesterol, on red meat. While they were looking the wrong way, this other food was silently inflaming arteries, stiffening blood vessels, and triggering heart attacks in people who did everything their doctor said. If you are over 60, this could be the most important thing you hear all year because the damage is happening right now and most people have no idea. Stay with me until the very end because the number one truth I'm going to reveal about this food is backed by research so alarming that one major study found it increases your risk of a fatal cardiac event by over 40%. Even when your cholesterol levels look completely normal on paper, 40%. And the food responsible is something most seniors eat every single day. I am Dr. William Lee, a physician specialized in senior health with over 15 years of dedicated clinical experience. I have sat across from thousands of patients over 60 who did everything right. They took their statins, they avoided butter, they watched their fat intake, and they still ended up in my office or worse in the emergency room. What I'm about to share goes against the narrative that has dominated medicine for the past 50 years. But I have seen it with my own eyes, patient after patient, and I refuse to stay silent any longer. If this information sounds valuable to you already, hit that like button right now, because what comes next could genuinely save your life or the life of someone you love. Let us start by understanding what is really happening inside your body. After 60, your cardiovascular system becomes significantly more vulnerable. Your arterial walls naturally lose some elasticity. Your inflammatory response becomes harder to regulate. Your heart has to work harder to do the same job it did at 40. This is normal aging. But here is the problem. There is a category of food that exploits every single one of those vulnerabilities. It does not just raise cholesterol. It triggers systemic inflammation. It damages the inner lining of your arteries, the endothelium, which is the thin protective layer that prevents clots from forming. It spikes blood sugar in ways that accelerate arterial stiffening. And it does all of this quietly without any obvious symptoms, sometimes for years. The medical community has known pieces of this puzzle for decades, but the full picture has only been coming into focus in recent years as researchers started connecting inflammation, insulin resistance, and heart disease in ways that completely reframe what the biggest threat actually is. Here is what terrifies me most. The food I am talking about is not something extreme. It is not fast food consumed daily or alcohol in excess. It is something marketed as convenient, affordable, and in many cases actively promoted as heart healthy. And that is exactly why it is so dangerous for people over 60. Before we go further, I want to ask you something. How old are you right now? Are you in your 60s, your 70s, maybe your 80s? If you have been told by a doctor in the past 5 years that your heart health looks fine, type fine in the comments below, because what I am about to share may completely change how you interpret that reassurance. Now let us talk about what this food actually does, step by step inside your aging cardiovascular system, and then I will rank the most dangerous forms of it, from concerning to absolutely critical, so you know exactly what to watch for. This is a countdown. We are going from the least understood danger to the most deadly form of this food category. We are talking about ultra-processed foods and specifically the hidden sugar and refined carbohydrate content inside them. But I am not going to give you a vague warning about junk food. I am going to break this down into specific food types ranked by the actual cardiovascular damage they cause in people over 60 based on the most current research available. Number 10 on our list, flavored yogurt marketed as low-fat. This one surprises almost everyone. Yogurt has a health halo. It has had one for 30 years. Walk into any grocery store and you will see yogurt positioned in the health section with labels screaming about probiotics, about calcium, about being good for your gut. And plain unsweetened yogurt actually can be beneficial, but flavored low-fat yogurt is a completely different product. When food manufacturers remove fat, they replace the lost flavor with sugar, sometimes a lot of it. A single 6 container of popular flavored yogurt can contain 15, 17, even 20 grams of added sugar. That is more sugar than 2 chocolate chip cookies. And here is the cardiovascular problem for seniors specifically. That sugar spike hits your bloodstream fast. Your pancreas releases insulin to manage it. Over time, repeated insulin spikes accelerate a process called glycation, where sugar molecules attach to proteins in your arterial walls and make them stiff and brittle. A study published in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology found that diets high in added sugar were associated with a significantly increased risk of cardiovascular mortality independent of total calorie intake. Independent meaning it was not about how much you ate overall, it was specifically about the sugar. For people over 60 whose arterial flexibility is already declining naturally, this matters enormously. Pro tip here, if you enjoy yogurt, switch to plain Greek yogurt with no added sugar. Add fresh berries yourself. You get the probiotics, the protein, and none of the hidden sugar damage. But that is just number 10. Let us keep moving. Number 9, whole grain bread and crackers with added sugars and seed oils. The whole grain label is one of the most misleading in the entire food industry. Whole grain sounds like it should be good for you. And technically, whole grains eaten in their most natural form, minimally processed, do contain fiber and nutrients. But most commercially produced whole grain bread and crackers are not that. They are made with refined grain flour, with the grain reconstituted and then enriched with added sugar, high fructose corn syrup in some cases, and industrial seed oils like soybean oil, canola oil, and sunflower oil. Here is why seed oils matter for your heart specifically. These oils are extremely high in omega-6 fatty acids. When the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 in your body gets out of balance, and in most American seniors, it is dramatically out of balance, chronic inflammation increases. Inflammation is now understood to be one of the primary drivers of atherosclerosis, the buildup of plaque inside your arteries. A review published in Nutrients Journal found that excessive omega-6 intake relative to omega-3 was associated with increased inflammatory markers directly linked to cardiovascular risk. The bread in your kitchen right now may be contributing to that imbalance every single day. This brings us to number 8, diet sodas and artificially sweetened beverages. Now, I want to be very clear here because this one surprises people. The sugar in regular soda is obviously harmful. Everyone has heard that. But diet sodas with zero sugar with artificial sweeteners were supposed to be the safe alternative. For decades, cardiologists were comfortable telling patients, if you want something sweet to drink, go diet. The research that has come out in the past 10 years has seriously undermined that advice. A study published in the Journal of the American Heart Association following over 80,000 postmenopausal women over a 12-year period found that those who consumed 2 or more artificially sweetened drinks per day had a 40% higher risk of heart disease and a 23% higher risk of stroke compared to those who rarely consumed them, 40%. And the researchers found this was not explained by pre-existing health conditions. The association remained after controlling for body weight, diabetes, and physical activity. For the aging cardiovascular system, the suspected mechanism involves gut microbiome disruption, altered insulin signaling, and direct effects on blood vessel function. Artificial sweeteners like aspartame, sucralose, and saccharin are not neutral. They appear to interfere with the body's metabolic signaling in ways we are only beginning to fully understand. Before we continue, if you are finding this valuable so far, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. My mission is to give you clear, honest health information designed for adults over 60 and share this video. Think about someone you know who drinks diet soda every day thinking it is safe. A simple share might be one of the most important things you do for them this week. Number 7, breakfast cereals, including brand-based varieties. I remember Patricia, a 71-year-old retired school teacher from Chicago. She came to my office after her 3rd consecutive annual checkup showing elevated inflammatory markers. Her cholesterol was actually well controlled thanks to a statin she had been on for 8 years. But her C-reactive protein, which is a blood marker of systemic inflammation, was consistently high, and her fasting blood sugar was creeping upward, approaching pre-diabetic levels. She was baffled. She told me she ate what she considered a perfect breakfast every morning, bran cereal with skim milk and a glass of orange juice. She had been doing this for 20 years. I asked her to bring in the cereal box on her next visit. When I looked at the nutrition label, a single cup of that cereal contained 12 g of sugar and 41 degrees of total carbohydrates. Combined with the orange juice, her breakfast was delivering over 60 grams of sugar and refined carbohydrates within 30 minutes of waking up every morning for 2 decades. I explained to Patricia that we needed to completely rethink her morning routine. We switched her to eggs, avocado, and a small portion of berries, no cereal, no juice. Within 8 weeks, her C-reactive protein dropped significantly. Within 3 months, her fasting blood sugar had returned to a fully normal range. She told me, "Doctor, I cannot believe I was doing damage with the breakfast I thought was protecting me." That was the hardest part for me to tell her. Not that she had done something reckless, but that she had been genuinely trying to be healthy and the food industry had let her down. This was not bad luck. This was her body finally being given what it actually needed, and you can experience exactly the same result. Number 6, microwave popcorn and processed snack foods with trans fat replacements. Most people know about trans fats. The FDA banned partially hydrogenated oils, the main source of artificial trans fats, in 2018, and that was a genuine public health victory. Trans fats were devastating for the cardiovascular system, raising LDL cholesterol while simultaneously lowering HDL, the protective kind. But here is what most people do not know. When manufacturers remove trans fats from their products, they replace them primarily with highly refined palm oil and intraesterified fats. These are chemically modified fats created through a process that rearranges fatty acid chains to give processed foods their desired texture and shelf life. Early research suggests intraesterified fats may have some of the same negative cardiovascular effects as trans fats, specifically raising blood glucose and lowering HDL cholesterol. The science is still developing, but the early signals are concerning. For seniors over 60, whose HDL tends to already be declining with age, anything that further suppresses it deserves serious attention. Microwave popcorn, crackers, cookies, frozen meals. Many of these products quietly transitioned from trans fats to these replacement fats without any change in labeling requirements. You would have no way of knowing. Now let us move to number 5, and this is where the research becomes truly alarming. Fruit juice, including fresh squeezed and 100% juice. This may be the most counterintuitive item on this entire list. Fruit juice has been a fixture of the American healthy breakfast for generations. Orange juice, apple juice, grape juice, 100% natural fruit. How could this possibly be harmful? Here is the mechanism. When you eat a whole fruit, the fiber inside it slows the absorption of the fruit's natural sugars significantly. Your blood sugar rises gradually, your insulin response is measured, but when you drink fruit juice even freshly squeezed, the fiber is gone. You are consuming a concentrated dose of fructose and glucose with no buffer. For an 8 oz glass of orange juice, you are getting approximately 26 dries of sugar with almost no fiber. Your blood sugar spikes, your insulin spikes. This cycle repeated daily accelerates insulin resistance, which is now understood to be one of the most powerful drivers of cardiovascular disease in older adults. A landmark study published in The Lancet followed over 50,000 adults over many years and found that each additional daily serving of fruit juice was associated with a measurable increase in type 2 diabetes risk and separately with markers of increased cardiovascular risk. Whole fruit consumption showed no such association. The fruit itself was not the problem. The removal of fiber was the problem. For seniors, this distinction is critically important because cardiovascular risk compounds with age and insulin resistance in your 60s, accelerates arterial damage into your 70s and 80s in ways that are very hard to reverse. Type yes in the comments right now. If you are going to eliminate fruit juice from your morning routine after watching this, and type 0, if you are skeptical, your comment helps other viewers know they are not alone in making this decision. Number 4, flavored oatmeal packets and instant oats with added sugar. Plain oats are genuinely one of the best foods for cardiovascular health in older adults. The research on this is strong and consistent. Beta-glucan, the soluble fiber in oats, has been shown in multiple clinical trials to reduce LDL cholesterol and support healthy blood pressure. But flavored instant oatmeal packets are a fundamentally different food. A single packet of popular flavored instant oatmeal can contain 15 to 20 grams of added sugar. And the oat structure itself is processed in a way that dramatically increases how quickly the carbohydrates are absorbed. Instead of the slow, steady energy release of steel-cut or rolled oats, you get a rapid blood sugar spike nearly as sharp as eating candy, then a crash. For seniors over 60, that crash matters beyond just feeling tired. Reactive hypoglycemia after a high sugar meal triggers a cascade of stress hormones, including cortisol and adrenaline, that directly stress the cardiovascular system. Repeated exposure to these cortisol spikes has been linked to hypertension, arterial inflammation, and increased cardiac event risk in aging adults. Pro tip: if you want the genuine cardiovascular benefits of oats, use steel-cut oats or old-fashioned rolled oats with nothing added and flavor them yourself with cinnamon, which has its own blood sugar stabilizing properties, and a small handful of walnuts for omega-3 support. Number 3, margarine and vegetable spread alternatives to butter. I want to tell you about James, a 78-year-old retired engineer from Boston. He was one of the most disciplined patients I've ever had. He exercised 3 times a week, kept a food journal, and had switched from butter to margarine back in the early 1990s when his first cardiologist told him it was the heart-healthy choice. For almost 30 years, he used margarine on everything. When he came to see me 3 years ago, he had already had one minor cardiac event, what we call a silent myocardial infection, detected on a routine EKG. His cholesterol numbers were actually reasonable, but his inflammatory markers were consistently elevated, and his arterial imaging showed significant stiffening for his age. When I reviewed his diet in detail, the margarine was one of the first things I flagged. Even modern margarine that are technically trans fat-free often contain highly processed seed oils in their refined form and emulsifiers like mono and diglycerides, which can still contain small amounts of trans fats under the current labeling rules. The rules allow products to be labeled zero trans fat if they contain less than half a gram per serving. But if you use margarine 3 times a day, that adds up. I transitioned James to a modest amount of high-quality butter from grass-fed cows, which is rich in vitamin K2, a nutrient now understood to be important for keeping calcium in bones and out of arterial walls. I also added extra virgin olive oil as his primary cooking fat. 6 months later, his inflammatory markers had improved meaningfully, and he told me, "Doctor, I spent 30 years thinking I was doing the right thing. I wish someone had told me sooner." I told him what I will tell you now. You are not broken. The information you were given was broken, and it is never too late to make a change. His story was not unique. His recovery was not a miracle. It was his body getting what it had been waiting for, and you can experience exactly the same. Number 2, low-fat processed foods and reduced fat snack products. This category deserves special attention because it is so deeply embedded in how seniors were taught to eat beginning in the 1980s and 90s. In our low-fat dietary guidelines that dominated American medicine for decades were based on a fundamental misunderstanding of how dietary fat actually affects cardiovascular risk. When food companies reformulated their products to be low-fat, they needed to maintain palatability. The solution was almost always the same: replace the fat with sugar, with refined starch, or with both. Low-fat cookies, reduced fat crackers, fat-free salad dressings, low-fat frozen meals. All of these products compensated for the removal of fat by dramatically increasing their sugar and refined carbohydrate content. And while fat, particularly saturated fat, has a complex relationship with cardiovascular risk that is still being debated in the research community, sugar and refined carbohydrates have a much more direct and clearly documented pathway to cardiovascular damage. They drive inflammation, they accelerate glycation of arterial tissue, they dysregulate insulin, they raise triglycerides. A comprehensive meta-analysis published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, reviewing data from over 300,000 adults, found that dietary sugar intake, not dietary fat intake, was the stronger independent predictor of cardiovascular mortality across populations, 300,000 adults. That is not a small study. For seniors who grew up being told fat was the enemy, this is a profound reorientation. The enemy was never fat. The enemy was the highly processed, high sugar replacements the food industry gave us instead. And now we have reached number one on our list, the single food category causing more cardiac damage in American seniors than anything else. Ultra-processed convenience meals, frozen entree, and packaged meal replacements marketed specifically to seniors. This is the category I feel most strongly about because it is the most cynical. Food companies have identified the senior market with precision. They know that older adults often live alone, may have limited mobility, are often on fixed incomes, and may have been told by doctors to watch their sodium, their fat, or their calories. And they have created an entire product category specifically designed to appeal to those concerns while continuing to load their products with the precise ingredients that most damage the aging cardiovascular system. Frozen diet meals for seniors. Meal replacement shakes marketed for older adults. Shelf-stable packaged foods positioned as easy nutrition. Let me tell you what is actually inside them. Refined grain fillers, corn syrup solids, maltodextrin, which is a refined carbohydrate with a glycemic index higher than table sugar. Sodium in quantities that directly raise blood pressure, industrial seed oils, artificial flavors and preservatives, carrageen, and other additives that have been linked to gut inflammation. A study published in the British Medical Journal, one of the largest studies ever conducted on ultra-processed food consumption, followed over 100,000 adults and found that every 10% increase in the proportion of ultra-processed foods in the diet was associated with a 12% increase in cardiovascular disease risk. And critically, the association held even after controlling for nutritional factors like sugar, fat, and sodium content, suggesting that something about ultra-processed foods themselves beyond their individual ingredients is damaging to the cardiovascular system. The current leading theory involves advanced glycation end reducts, compounds formed during industrial food processing at high temperatures, which directly damage arterial tissue and accelerate aging in the cardiovascular system. I remember Linda, a 74-year-old retired nurse from Atlanta. She came to me after her cardiologist told her she was on the edge of needing a second stent procedure. She had already had one coronary intervention 2 years earlier. She was terrified, and she was doing everything her medical team had told her. She was eating frozen diet meals because they had calorie labels on them. She was drinking a senior nutrition shake every morning. She told me she was eating healthier than she ever had in her life. When I looked at what she was actually consuming, the picture was completely different. Her daily diet was dominated by maltodextrin, corn syrup, refined grains, and industrial oils, all packaged in boxes and bottles with words like heart healthy, low fat, and physician recommended on the label. We rebuilt her diet from the ground up. Real food, eggs, fish, olive oil, leafy greens, berries, nuts, no packages, no labels claiming health benefits, nothing that needed more than 3 or 4 ingredients. Within 12 weeks, her cardiologist called me directly to ask what we had changed. Her inflammatory markers had dropped substantially. Her arterial imaging at her follow-up showed measurably less progression of her existing plaque. She called me herself and said, "Doctor, I feel better than I have felt in 10 years. I am not afraid anymore." That was not a miracle. That was her body finally at age 74 getting what it had needed for years. Now I want to give you something concrete. Let me tell you exactly how to implement this starting tomorrow. Here is your action plan. First thing tomorrow morning, before you do anything else, read the label of everything in your kitchen that comes in a box, a bag, or a bottle. You are looking for 4 things: added sugar, listed in any form, including corn syrup, maltodextrin, dextrose, or anything ending in O. Industrial seed oils, meaning soybean oil, canola oil, corn oil, cottonseed oil, sunflower oil, or safflower oil. More than 5 ingredients on the label, particularly if you cannot pronounce them. Any product with a health claim on the front of the package, because food that genuinely supports health rarely needs to advertise that fact. Within 3 days of eliminating the highest sugar, most heavily processed items from your diet, most people notice a meaningful improvement in their energy levels and a reduction in afternoon fatigue. Within a week, many notice improved sleep quality and less morning stiffness. Within 2 weeks, blood pressure often begins to move in a positive direction as sodium load and inflammatory food intake drops. Within a month, your next blood test will likely show measurable improvements in inflammatory markers, triglycerides, and fasting blood sugar. Your doctor may be surprised. You will not be. Do not make these critical errors as you begin. First, do not try to change everything at once. Pick the highest impact item from your kitchen and remove it first. Start with whichever product in your home has the most added sugar. Second, do not replace processed food with diet versions of processed food. Low-fat, sugar-free, and light versions of unhealthy foods are almost always worse than the originals. Third, do not confuse calorie counts with food quality. The most damaging foods for your heart are not necessarily the highest calorie ones. A low-calorie frozen meal can be far more cardiovascularly damaging than a higher calorie meal of real whole food. Fourth, do not feel ashamed of what you have been eating. You are following the advice of an industry and a medical establishment that for decades prioritized cholesterol management over metabolic health. The information landscape is changing. You are changing with it today. Remember this, you are not broken. The dietary advice you received was broken. Your body, even after 60, even after 70, even after 80, retains a remarkable capacity for recovery when it is given the right raw materials. The research is clear, inflammation is reversible, insulin sensitivity can be restored, arterial function can improve. You do not have to accept your current trajectory as inevitable. This is not just aging. This is a correctable problem. So here's my challenge to you. Commit to eliminating just one ultra-processed food from your daily routine for the next 30 days. Just